We're going to have the next speaker, and our next speaker is Hank Levin. And I'm going to read to you about him. And he is going to be talking about innovations and breakthroughs on meter technology. Okay, Hank Levin was introduced to Scientology in 1967 at the New York Center, run by Gene and Arlene Hobel. He went up the grades to endless OT3. His ex-wife took the training route up to class 4, and Hank studied and absorbed all her materials, though at the time he did not foresee professional involvement. And he started the Artistic Development Foundation, hiring qualified teaching personnel for the purpose to provide services for artists, musicians, and performers in New York City, which was stopped by Yvonne Jench, who felt that it conflicted with her new celebrity center. He later left the CFS when he found that the DFP at Flag had lied about a tech estimate in order to get funds that they had discovered he possessed. And petitioning up the lines for redress, he discovered the closer he got to the top, ending with the President Heber Jench, the more the leadership resembled run-of-the-mill New York mafia. Okay, and he left in 1980. This is the first time I've read this, so you might have to bleep me out or whatever you want to do. Okay, Hank's actual professional training was acquired independently under the training and mentorship of Tia Greenberg, who, with her husband Lloyd, ran a successful center in Altadena, California. He began offering services professionally over 25 years ago in Northern California, where he lived. He also accepted the editorship of the Free Spirit Journal from its founder, Mark Jones. During the 13 years that Hank edited the magazine, it grew from being a newsletter for disaffected Scientologists into a popular magazine on alternative therapies of all kinds, but with a particular emphasis on clearing with the biomonitor, which I think we all know what that means. Hank published articles on clearing from practitioners and writers of all persuasions, including Alan Walter, Bill Nichols, Michael Goldstein, Fleming Funch, Bob Ross, and many others. When Hank turned the Free Spirit Journal over to Alan Walter about 10 years ago, it was being distributed by 2 national distributors and was available in bookstores and newsstands all over the country. Through it, innumerable new people became interested in clearing, totally independent of ZFS. Hank and his wife Norma, who was the graphic design and layout editor, decided to turn the magazine over to Alan Walter in order to focus on Hank's own writing projects as well as meter design and production. Sadly, Alan chose to let the Free Spirit Journal die after only 1 or 2 issues. Hank designed the first Clarity meter in 1997 in order to provide independent clearing practitioners with a highly sensitive and robust instrument at a reasonable price. In 2004, realizing that new metering students had a lot of trouble keeping the needle on the dial, especially at high sensitivity, he brought out the Clarity Auto Reset meter. Late last year, the Virtual Clarity meter, a computer-based biomonitor, was introduced, available only at a fraction of the price of the hardware meters. This innovation also makes it possible to run sessions over the internet, eliminating the necessity for the client to travel great distances for sessions. In this weekend's presentation, Hank will share the latest innovations that will make it easier for clearing practitioners to share their services with greater numbers of clients than ever before. Frank and I have been using the Clarity meter for years, and it's working really perfectly for us. So I just want to acknowledge that. And now I give you Hank Levin.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Who here audits with a meter? Very good. And who audits without a meter? Okay, thank you. Good, very good. I've done both, and it's it's like being rich. I mean, I've been rich and I've been poor, and it's better to be rich. Does anybody here fly an airplane?
Flight simulators.
Used to. Got a couple of people who fly, or used to. You know what a gyro compass is?
Yep.
Okay, it's like a compass, but it's more dependable than a compass. And to me, a meter is like it's like a gyro compass. You can fly without it. You can fly looking out the window, but you'd be silly to do it, especially at night. And I've also heard it likened to a GPS. It's a GPS for the mind. You know, back in the days, we didn't have that analogy. But who here uses the GPS when they're driving? Great. And they use them in airplanes now, even little airplanes, like I used to have. So this is our GPS for the mind. Oh, by the way, John, your name was left out of the list of people that contributed to the magazine. I hadn't read that carefully, so I wish that you had been in there. The list with all with Levin and everybody else. What I'm going to handle today, what I'm going to talk about, share with you, is first of all how I came to build meters. And anybody interested in that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to tell you a little bit about the virtual clarity meter. Anybody interested in that?
Yes.
Good. And something else that's kind of new. It's on the razor's edge of technology. It's internet-based sessions. And I'm not sure if you're interested in, I'm not sure everybody's interested in that, but I think some people are, and I'm very excited about it, so I hope you'll let me share it with you. And something else that everybody might not be interested in, but I'm excited about it, is the interest that's been shown recently in the, I call it a biomonitor, rather than brand X or you know, this sort of thing. It's a non-proprietary name. There's been a lot of it, well, not a lot, but there's been significant interest shown by psychologists. And I'm in touch with some of them, and I want to tell you something about that. I want to share with you some of the projections, what I have in mind for the future, and I'd like to share an offer with you. So, we begin. As you heard in the introduction, I started in the C of S in about 1968. I left approximately in the 80s. I'm not sure the exact date, but I know it was about a year before the infamous Mission Holders Conference. I left shortly before it became fashionable to leave. And I moved to the Pacific Northwest. It was like a divorce in the third dynamic. It was kind of traumatic for me. But I came down and started working at Thea Greenberg in 1983, and I worked with her until about, until just before she died, which I think was around 1990, but I'm not sure about the dates. I never remember dates. I've been in professional practice since approximately, again, 1989. I kind of eased into it. A lot of pro bono sessions, and then people started paying me. And then, at a certain point, I needed meters. I needed meters for training. I started training people. And I used to sell the Barclay meters. Is anybody familiar with those? The Alphametrics. Anybody ever see an Alphametrics meter? They were made in Australia. Very sensitive. They had a very nice, expensive meter movement. They were fragile, they broke easily, and they had no TA counter. I sold some of the Penberthy meters. The the Penberthy meters were nicely made, but they weren't sensitive enough. And neither of those people were negotiable as far as changing any characteristics about the meter. Bartley wasn't going to put a TA counter on his, and he wasn't going to modify it. It was like I bought ones of it. And Penberthy was, in my experience, very difficult to work with, and he had no intention of increasing the sensitivity of the meter at that time. Had I realized how hard it was going to be, I would have probably gone to England and sat on his doorstep until he agreed to work with me. But that didn't happen. And these being handmade units, there was insufficient discount for resale. These people could only give something like a 10% discount if you were reselling them, which is, I think, absurd. So I had a friend who offered to make meters for me, and his name was Tim Ryan. He was another student of Tia's. He's one of the best auditors that I know of in the United States. There are only a couple of people that I go to when I need help, and I've traded sessions with him. He was one of her, well, she basically had two disciples. She did not really have any way of teaching. She didn't have, I guess, what you would call I'm looking for the word, a protocol for teaching. You had to go live with her. It was almost oriental, the way we learned from her. And we would live there and hang out. She would give me sessions and stuff. Well, Tim was one of the other people. And Tim went a different route than I did. He's a very talented programmer, and he started a company that became an internationally known music hardware and software company. Any musicians here? Okay, anybody recognize Miniman? You go into a Guitar Center, big store, and there'll be a whole aisle of Miniman stuff. That's Tim's stuff.
Guitars or amps?
Guitars, amps, MIDI stuff, computer stuff, drum machines. Anything that was selling hot, he would figure out how to make it cheaper and sell it. Right. And he got very wealthy from this. And this was very private information while he was in the company. You know, I didn't want anybody, especially you-know-who, to know that he had any connection with this. But he offered to, now he's out for a few years. He's a private individual. He's living in Europe, so but he offered to make meters for me, and I kind of put it off. And finally I accepted it, and he started ordering up parts and asking for samples, and he was getting things made in Asia. And they kept sending him wrong samples. There was communication problems. Meter movements are very difficult to have made. Most of the people, if you don't want something out of a barrel, if you want something specially modified, you find probably in Hong Kong, probably around 3 engineers that know how to do it. And they're all in the same family. And it's about the same in this country. There are very few people who actually design analog meters anymore, and they're all in their 70s. And you call a company and you have special requirements, they'll call somebody out of retirement to come and work on it. It's very hard to get them. So I used to think, oh, it's Radio Shack stuff. No, it's not. He gave up.